Imagine this. He didn't look for it. He didn't chase it. He was just being who you are, and yet he noticed you. He's married. He wears the ring. He has a life, a story, a promise made long before your world met his. But something in the way his eyes rest on you stays. There's a pause when he talks to you, a gentleness that wasn't there before, and deep down you feel it. He's drawn to you, not just in a physical way, not in some temporary moment. It's deeper than that, something he may not fully understand himself, something that makes both of you uneasy. What do you do when a man who gave vows to another starts to feel something unexplainable for you? What do you do when you feel it too? This isn't about drama. This isn't about betrayal. It's about the quiet force of the soul and what it reveals. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only stays, it grows, and what we often resist most is the mirror." Because sometimes you're not just a woman, you're the mirror he's been running from his whole life. You wake something in him that he buried under duty, under patterns, under years of becoming someone he was never meant to be. He may not know how to name it, but you feel it in the way he stays a little longer in your presence, in how he listens with more depth, in how he laughs differently around you because you touch the part of him that feels wild again, the version he locked away when he became a husband, a provider, a man who chose stability. But now he's starting to feel again. And that changes everything. You didn't expect this. You might even feel guilt for sensing it. But this isn't about blame. It's about energy, and energy doesn't lie. He's pulled toward you because you represent something that's missing in his own world. Not just desire, but presence. Not just beauty, but life. You remind him of a time he felt more himself, or someone he once dreamed of becoming. You reflect the part of him he left behind in order to feel safe, to follow tradition, to choose what looked right. And now that forgotten part is awake and it's looking at you. You may be wondering, if he wants me, why doesn't he leave her? Why doesn't he choose me? The answer isn't easy. It's simpler to feel freedom than to live it. It's easier for him to dream through you than to break down the world he built with someone else. And the sad truth is that some men don't really want to be free. They want the feeling of it. They want to taste it in you, to remember what it felt like to feel deeply, without actually choosing that path. Carl Jung talked about this as the projection of the inner feminine, not a person, but a symbol of something missing in his own heart. You become that symbol. You are not just yourself. You are everything he's been missing, and that's why he desires you, even though he's married. But here's what people rarely say. That kind of energy can feel powerful, not only for him, but also for you. Because when a man looks at you like you are everything he's longed for, when he listens to you like every word you speak matters, when he reveals a softness he hides from everyone else, it touches something deep inside. It makes you feel wanted in a way that's rare, in a way that feels like fate, even if it's not meant to last. But the danger in this is quiet. You begin to believe his desire proves your worth. You start to see his longing as love. You start carrying the hope of what could have been, instead of facing what really is. And that is the trap. His feelings might be honest, but that doesn't make them right or fair or meant to be followed. He wants you, yes, but does he have the strength to truly meet you? Not just in passion, but in honesty. Not just behind closed doors, but in truth. Many women stay stuck in this invisible waiting room, feeling deeply connected to someone who already belongs to another. And they ask themselves, was I meant for him, even if I wasn't picked? Here's what's real. You may have stirred something meaningful in him, but that doesn't mean you're responsible for healing him. You weren't born to be someone's quiet escape. You weren't meant to be the softness he runs to while still living in another version of life. When he made vows to another person, he created a world with boundaries. If he wants to change that world, it's his job to do so, with integrity, with courage, without pulling your heart into the shadows. You are not a test. You are not a chapter in someone else's story. You are a whole woman with a whole soul. And that soul deserves to be chosen, completely, not halfway, with clarity, not confusion. If a man is drawn to you while still committed to someone else, it speaks more of the gaps in him than it does of you. It tells of the love he never gave himself. And while his gaze might make you feel seen, you must ask yourself, does he see you, or does he only see what you reflect? The answer to that question carries everything. Because being wanted is not the same as being cherished, being craved is not the same as being loved, and being chosen for real takes a kind of bravery most men never find. He desires you because you woke something inside him. You made him realize he's still alive, that he can still feel, that something real can still move through the quiet. But that awakening wasn't only for him, it was also for you. Because when you move something in someone else, you are also being asked to move something in yourself. Maybe it's your own hunger, maybe it's your deep need to be seen, maybe it's a truth inside you that shame has kept silent. But whatever it is, it's rising now, and it deserves your attention. So before you hold on to what he felt, hold on to what you felt. Not just for him, but what you felt about yourself when he was there. What part of you came alive? What emotion did you finally allow? What dream did his attention bring back to life? Because this isn't only about his interest. This is about your awakening, and you don't need his permission to follow it. You don't need to be picked to know you're worthy. You are already complete, already enough, even without him, especially without him. If this message touches something inside, it's not a coincidence. So many people feel stuck in emotional patterns they can't explain. Jung's teachings help uncover those hidden forces shaping our connections. The link is in the first comment. Let's go deeper. He wants you even though he's taken, and now you're left holding something delicate, not a relationship, not a promise, but a feeling that won't leave you alone. You keep playing back the moments, the way he looked at you like you were the answer to a question he didn't know he had, the way your body responded, the way your heart felt both scared and awake. And somewhere in that swirl of feelings, you begin to doubt your own understanding. Did he care? Was it just a moment? Were you wrong to feel this way? But maybe those aren't the right questions. Maybe it's not about whether he truly loved you. Maybe it's about whether he showed you a piece of yourself you had forgotten. Sometimes the people who come into our lives aren't meant to stay. They're meant to remind us, to shake us up, to stir what's been sleeping. And then they go. Not because you weren't enough, but because the moment had served its purpose. You might have been the first person in years to really see him, but that doesn't mean he had what it takes to stay. Seeing someone and being ready to build something with them are not the same. He might have longed for you, but did he ever offer you his whole self? Did he ever say, I'm ready to risk everything for this? Or was it always halfway? Half love, half truth. This is where so many women lose themselves. In the maybe. In the what if, he stirred something real in you. But if he never came with clarity, with real choices, with full honesty, then what he gave was only the shadow of what love could be, not the truth, just the echo. Jung once said we often place the parts of ourselves we never lived onto other people. That's what happens here. You became for him a picture of what he lost, of what he never became. But was he ready to face that picture? And more deeply, are you ready to face your own? When a married man is pulled toward you, he might not be seeing you clearly. He sees the part of himself he locked away, the road he didn't walk, the younger version of him who still wanted to take risks, to feel alive. And you, with your energy, your heart, your presence, you bring that version back to life. But here's what no one warns you about. Sometimes the one who wakes the soul is not the one meant to walk beside it. Sometimes your role was to be the spark, the realization, the moment of clarity that doesn't make you small. It makes you sacred, so sacred that he couldn't carry your truth. And now you carry this memory like a secret, something beautiful but unfinished. And yes, it hurts, because you didn't just want to be seen. You wanted to be chosen, not with glances, with action, not in hiding, in truth. And when that didn't happen, it left you not doubting him, but doubting yourself. That's the pain that must be faced, because when someone connects with your soul but goes back to a life that no longer fits, it feels like losing something meant to be. But maybe this wasn't about being picked. Maybe it was about realizing that you were already whole, that the part of you that felt alive with him was never given by him, it was revealed, and now that it's been brought into the light, it's yours to keep. You don't need him to come back to prove it was real. You don't need him to choose you to feel chosen. You are not a shadow waiting to be seen. You are the light itself, and you deserve to be met, not visited. To be held, not imagined. Let's speak to that part of you still wondering. Yes, he felt it. Yes, it was real. No, you didn't imagine it. But also, no, it wasn't yours to carry forever. If he chose comfort over depth, that's his pattern. If he walked away from the mirror, that's his fear. You can't keep chasing someone hiding from his own soul. Let his silence be your answer. Let his distance be the reason you return to yourself. Because now, the real work begins, not in understanding him, but in facing the part of you that still waits, the part that thinks love must be earned through pain, the part that settles for halfway and calls it fate. You deserve more than being someone's awakening. You deserve someone who meets you fully, with open eyes, with steady hands, with a heart that isn't afraid. That's where your power lies. You take back the energy you gave. You gather the pieces of yourself that got lost in his longing, and you turn inward. You ask, what did I feel when I was with him that I now want to keep alive in me? What did he reflect that I now need to become for myself? And you become it. You stop waiting, you begin building, you step into your fire, because if he could see your light, so can someone else. Someone unafraid. Someone who doesn't need to lose himself to love you. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. That's what this experience was pointing to, not him, but you. Not his love, but your truth. You never needed his love to be complete. You never needed his presence to be powerful. You only needed the reminder, and now, you have it. Let him go in peace, not because it didn't matter, but because you matter more. And as you move forward, you carry not sadness, but remembrance of how deeply you can feel, of how brightly you can burn, of how alive you truly are when you stop dimming for someone else's comfort. You are not a pause in another's life. You are the rhythm in your own. And your story, it's not ending, it's just beginning. No more waiting, no more apology, no more hoping to be chosen. You already are. You didn't lose him. You lost the illusion of what you thought he was capable of giving you. You lost the fantasy, not the reality. You lost a version of love that always came with hesitation, with conditions, with a quiet but constant sense of lack. And though your heart breaks, your soul breathes a little deeper now, because even in this pain, you are starting to see more clearly. You are beginning to wake up from a long emotional sleep, where your worth was tangled in someone else's indecision. You don't need to be remembered by him. You don't need him to come back with an apology or a confession or a grand explanation of why it happened the way it did. You don't need closure from someone who never truly gave you open space to begin with. The real closure is happening inside you, in the quiet nights, in the shaking but steady steps forward, in the way you are learning to sit with your ache and still say, I choose me. Maybe love isn't always a bond. Maybe sometimes it's a mirror. And he was just the mirror you needed at that point in your life to show you the parts of yourself that still wanted to be chosen, that still longed to be understood, that still craved validation. And now that mirror has shattered, and instead of trying to piece it back together, you are standing in the reflection of your own light, seeing who you really are when you're not chasing someone who cannot hold your heart. You are not a side story. You are not a temporary moment in someone else's confusion. You are not a lesson someone learns while keeping one foot in and one foot out. You are a whole universe of love, depth, energy, beauty, and truth. And any man who cannot see that, fully, freely, fearlessly, is not someone who gets to keep access to you, not even in memory, not even in your softest daydream. Yes, you miss him, but more than that, you miss the version of you who didn't doubt, who loved so purely it glowed. That part of you still lives inside you. It doesn't belong to him. It belongs to you. You created that love. You made it bloom in silence. You carried it in your chest like a sacred flame. And now you carry that same fire, not for him, but for yourself. Let yourself cry. Let yourself remember. Let yourself feel the ache in your stomach and the lump in your throat. but don't let yourself return to the emotional starvation you once accepted as love. You deserve a kind of love that doesn't ask you to wait in the background, that doesn't hide you from the light, that doesn't confuse your heart with fragments and fog. You deserve a love that sees you fully and chooses you fully. You are not broken, you are not too much, you are not too intense or too sensitive or too deep. You are simply someone who felt love in a way that demanded growth, and now growth is exactly what's happening. Not in him, but in you, the way your mind is opening, the way your heart is reshaping, the way your spirit is reclaiming its voice. That's healing, that's evolution, that's the miracle you didn't expect. Maybe he will think of you one day, sitting in silence, remembering the way your eyes looked when you believed in him, when you poured your love into spaces he didn't even know needed light. Maybe he'll miss you, but that won't matter by then, because by that time you'll be so rooted in yourself, so grounded in your worth, that you won't need to be missed to feel whole. The next time love finds you, and it will, it won't come with confusion. It won't ask you to be patient while someone figures out if you're worth it. It won't be a secret. It won't come after midnight in texts that say just enough to keep your heart hooked, but never enough to give you peace. The next time love comes, it will stand tall. It will be clear. It will not need to be chased. It will recognize you. And when that love comes, you'll realize why this one had to end. Not because it wasn't real, but because it wasn't complete. Because your heart is no longer content with halfway. Because you are finally done with potential and ready for presence. You will look back and thank this pain, not because it was fair, not because it was easy, but because it woke you up, because it made you stronger, because it forced you to stop shrinking for someone else's comfort and start expanding into your own power. You don't have to keep waiting for the version of him you imagined. You don't have to keep hoping that he'll finally see the truth of who you are. You already see it. That's what matters now. That's what sets you free. He was not your forever, but he was your turning point. And from here, everything changes. From here, you are no longer chasing love. You are becoming it. And slowly, the distance becomes more than just physical. It becomes emotional, mental, spiritual. You start to realize he's not just slipping away. He's already gone. Not from your thoughts, not from your heart, but from your daily life, from your quiet spaces where you once lived like a whisper. You find yourself scrolling through old messages, reading them like sacred text, trying to hear his voice between the lines. But it only brings you closer to a version of him that doesn't exist anymore. A version you constructed, maybe, out of longing. You begin to see the truth not in his actions, but in your own silence. You stop waiting for the phone to light up. You stop imagining what his world looks like without you. And instead, you start building yours. You learn to breathe in the quiet, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. You begin to understand that love can live in a space where it is no longer returned, but you don't have to stay there. You recognize the ache wasn't about him. It was about the part of you that felt seen when he looked at you. It was about the way your soul lit up when he listened, even if he could never fully show up. You start to reclaim those pieces, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, not because you stopped loving him, but because you started loving yourself in ways he never could. You remember the way he made you laugh. You remember the softness in your voice when you spoke his name. But now, you speak your own name with just as much tenderness. You walk into rooms with your head high, not because he's watching, but because you are. You learn that grief isn't only for those who died. It's for the living who disappear in front of you. It's for the moments that never fully happened, for the kisses that stayed in your imagination, for the mornings you hoped would arrive and never did. And still, you rise. You no longer wait for closure, because you realize closure is not something they give. It's something you decide. It's the moment you stop writing a story that was never yours to finish. It's the way you let the memory of him pass through you like wind, not to destroy, but to remind you of what it felt like to feel deeply. You stop asking why. You stop needing the reason, because sometimes love doesn't fail. It just doesn't fit. Sometimes it's not about right or wrong, but timing. And sometimes the biggest growth comes from the love that couldn't stay. You begin to trust yourself again, your choices, your heart. You stop punishing yourself for being soft, for being open, for believing. Because the belief wasn't foolish, it was brave. Loving someone you couldn't keep wasn't a mistake. It was a mirror. It showed you the capacity of your own soul. Now you light candles not for him, but for yourself. You pray, not for him to come back, but for you to never lose yourself again in someone else's confusion. You wear your favorite dress, not hoping he'll notice, but because it makes you feel powerful. You listen to your favorite songs, and for once they're not about him. They're about you, healing, breathing, becoming, and one day, without warning, you look in the mirror and don't see the girl who waited. You see the woman who walked away, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Not because the love wasn't real, but because she finally knew hers was too. You might always carry a part of him in a quiet place inside you, but now it no longer aches. It simply exists, like a photograph in a drawer you no longer open. And even if your heart remembers, your soul no longer clings. Because love, real love, doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't ask you to wait. It doesn't make you feel like a secret. Real love chooses you in the daylight. It shows up. It stays. And until that love finds you, you give all that to yourself.